Have you ever felt like you're constantly getting caught up in little things all day long? You wake up, grab your phone, just 5 minutes, you tell yourself, and suddenly 45 minutes have vanished. News, TikTok, weekend parties, small talks that leave you tired instead of fulfilled. All those things, they're tiny cuts into your energy, into the discipline you've been trying to build. A colleague of mine, also a motivational coach from Vancouver, once told me, "Distraction never shows up as an enemy. It always comes disguised as comfort." And he was right. It whispers, "Just a little break, just this once." But piece by piece, it steals the power you need to do what truly matters in your life. Now imagine this. If every day you redirected that energy, the time you spend scrolling, worrying, or chatting aimlessly, into reading 10 more pages, working out for 30 more minutes, or calling your parents, who would you become a year from now? No one steals your energy. You give it away. And only when you learn to cut out even the smallest distractions will you begin the greatest journey of all, the journey of mastering yourself. I remember once, during a training session in Toronto, a student asked me, "How do I stay disciplined when everything around me pulls me away?" I paused for a moment and said, "Start by keeping promises to yourself, even the smallest ones." No one wakes up disciplined. Discipline is built from the simplest acts: going to bed on time, finishing your work even when no one praises you, exercising on cold mornings. These small things add up. They're like muscles. The more you train them, the stronger they grow. A study at the University of British Columbia found that people feel the happiest not when they rest, but when they accomplish something they once thought they couldn't. That quiet sense of pride. That's confidence being born. Think back to the last time you kept a promise to yourself, even a tiny one. That feeling is real energy. It doesn't come from coffee or compliments. It comes from you, and if you can do one small thing today, you can do great things tomorrow. After more than a decade working with adults, I've learned this. We lose focus not because we're lazy, but because we're surrounded by too many directions to look, too many voices to hear. Everything around us screams for attention. Ads, social media, other people's expectations. And slowly, we forget the most important question: what truly gives my life meaning? Picture this: a morning with no notifications, no emails, no buzzing phone. Just you, a cup of coffee, and one quiet hour to write down 3 things you truly want in life. It sounds simple, but that's an act of mastery, because when you choose silence, you're choosing yourself. A neuroscientist I met in Montreal once said, "The brain is only powerful when it rests in stillness. The less distracted you are, the deeper you become. And that depth is what separates those who chase life from those who lead it." So give yourself a moment alone every day, not to escape the world, but to come home to yourself. In that stillness, you'll find real strength. I once met a man in Calgary in his 40s. He told me that for years, he felt like he was living on someone else's schedule, waking up to alarms, working to please, relaxing to trends. But when I asked, "And what about you? What do you really want?" He fell silent for a long time, then said something I'll never forget. "I can't hear my own voice anymore." Have you ever felt that way? When life gets so loud you can't tell what's truly yours and what's been planted there by society? In those moments, closing the door to the world isn't selfish. It's an act of courage. In a culture that glorifies busyness, those who dare to say no are the ones who truly understand the value of time. They know when to stop, to recharge, to remind themselves that they are not machines reacting to life. They are human beings who can choose. So if you feel tired, don't force yourself to push harder. Give yourself space. Because in silence, you'll finally hear the call of the path you were born to walk. I once read, "A man or woman never knows how strong they are until life demands their strength." And I believe that's true, especially once you're past 30. Life is no longer a sprint. It's a marathon. The one who endures wins. One of my students in Ottawa, a mid-level manager, told me he felt completely drained. Not poor, just empty. He worked hard, but every day felt hollow. So I asked, "Do you still remember why you started?" He smiled weakly and said, "I forgot." That one sentence reminded me of so many people today. Busy, capable, yet disconnected from themselves. When you stop asking, "What am I doing?" and start asking, "Who am I becoming?" everything changes. Every choice, every small act, every mindful second shapes who you are. So today, no matter your age, pause for a moment and ask yourself, am I living with purpose or just reacting out of habit? Once, during a workshop in Vancouver, I asked my students, "What do you think makes people truly happy?" Answers poured in. Money, freedom, love, health. But then, a middle-aged woman stood up and said softly, "I think happiness is when I feel useful." The room fell silent because her words touched something deep. You see, when we live only for fun, we quickly feel empty. But when we live to be of service to our children, our parents, our community, or even to our own growth, peace naturally follows. Neuroscience shows that the feeling of being useful triggers the same dopamine response as pleasure, but it lasts far longer. Imagine this. If every day you did just one small thing that made someone's life a bit easier, you'd already be a better version of yourself than you were yesterday. And when you become valuable, the world moves toward you. Don't look for happiness in short bursts of laughter. Find it in the meaning behind what you do, in the eyes of someone you've helped. That's real energy, the kind that never fades, even in the darkest night. One autumn evening, I was walking by Lake Ontario. It was cold, quiet, the wind gentle. I saw a man running alone, maybe in his 50s. His strides were steady, strong. When he stopped by a bench, I asked, "Do you run every day?" He smiled. "I don't run to beat anyone. I run so I don't lose to myself." That sentence stayed with me for years, because most of us don't lose for lack of opportunity. We lose because we give up too soon. We stop right before the result shows. Just because we're tired or no one is cheering. But real discipline begins when no one's watching. I've seen people change their entire lives simply because they chose to stay 5 minutes longer. 5 more minutes of exercise, 5 more minutes of reading, 5 more minutes of not quitting. Sometimes strength doesn't come from breaking through, but from staying in the game. So if you're tired today, just don't quit. Walk slower if you must, but keep walking. Because every time you overcome yourself, even in the smallest way, you carve 2 words deep into your soul: resilience and discipline. And that is the foundation of all true success. Once, during a talk in Montreal, a woman asked me, "How do I know if I'm going in the right direction?" I smiled and asked her back, "When you wake up in the morning, do you feel excited or exhausted?" She paused, then whispered, "Mostly exhausted." And that's the sign. When every day becomes just a repetition of duty, we're no longer living. We're only existing. I used to be like that too. I worked hard, achieved a lot, yet felt empty. Until one day, a mentor said to me, "Don't ask how much your work pays you. Ask how much energy it gives you." That changed everything. I began choosing work that inspired me, even if it was harder. You can't control everything, but you can always choose a direction that feels meaningful. Every morning, ask yourself, What will make me proud when I look back tonight? That question is more powerful than any goal. When you live in alignment, energy flows toward you. Your body feels lighter, your mind clearer, and even the busiest days feel alive. That's what it means to be on the right path. I remember a winter afternoon in Quebec. After a workshop, a man came up to me and said, "I keep trying to change, but after a few days, I fall back into old habits. Does that mean I'm weak?" I looked at him and said, "No, you're not weak. You just haven't forgiven yourself yet." We often think strength means never falling, but real strength is knowing how to rise again and not blaming yourself for the times you've stumbled. Like in the gym, muscles don't grow while lifting weights, but during rest and recovery. The human spirit is the same. It grows in moments when we learn to be gentle with ourselves. Remember this: no one builds a strong life out of perfection. They build it out of persistence, falling, rising, and falling again, each time gaining a bit more wisdom, patience, and faith. If you're tired today, take a deep breath and tell yourself, "I'm not done yet." As long as you haven't given up, life is still opening itself to you, one steady, hopeful step at a time. I once read, "When you learn to be grateful for the small things, life begins to bring you the big ones." I didn't believe it at first, but after years of working with hundreds of people, I know it's true. Gratitude, even for a deep breath, a sunrise, or a stranger's smile, is one of the most powerful healing energies there is. A woman once told me she lost her job at 48. Instead of complaining, she started writing down 3 things she was grateful for each night. 6 months later, she found a new job and said, "I've never felt so at peace." Gratitude doesn't change our circumstances, but it changes the way we face them. When you live in gratitude, your mind moves from lack to abundance, and in that state, you start to see opportunities, not obstacles. So tonight, before you sleep, take 1 minute to think of 3 things you're truly thankful for, no matter how small. It's not just a mental exercise, it's a signal to life itself. I'm ready to receive more good things. Once, during a small talk in Halifax, I met a father in his 50s. He told me he'd spent years chasing money until one day his daughter asked, "Dad, are you ever tired?" And he didn't know how to answer. He said, "I'm not tired, but I'm not sure what I'm living for anymore." Those words stayed with me. Many of us live so fast that we forget where we're running. We trade health, time, and family dinners for achievements we sometimes don't even want. And then, one day, looking back, we realize, I wish I'd slowed down to hear my child's laughter, to sit longer with my parents, to hold someone tighter. Life doesn't ask us to do more. It asks us to live deeper. Each day, spend a few moments being truly present. Listen without judgment. Look without rushing. Touch without distraction. Because sometimes the simplest moments are the ones that nourish the soul the longest. Happiness isn't waiting at the end of the road. It's hidden in every step you take. I often tell my students, when you know where you're going, every step, no matter how small, has meaning. But sometimes we don't pause long enough to ask, where am I really heading? We keep moving, busy and determined, until one day we arrive somewhere we no longer want to be. One of my students in Toronto, a successful engineer, told me he felt lost, even though everything was fine. We did a simple exercise. Write down 3 things that make you feel most alive. The result surprised him. None of them were about work. He wrote, painting, playing with my kid, walking in the woods. That was the moment he realized he didn't need a bigger life, just a truer one. Meaning isn't something we find far away. It often hides in the simplest things: a meal shared, a hug given, a helping hand. When you live with full presence, every minute becomes part of your purpose. Let each day be not just another day, but one small step closer to the person you're meant to become. I remember a long trip through the mountains of British Columbia where I met an old man in his 70s sitting quietly on his porch, eyes fixed on the forest. I asked, if you could go back to 30, what would you do differently? He smiled gently and said, I'd stop more often, to feel what I have, instead of chasing what I don't. That answer has stayed with me, because so often we rush toward the future and forget that happiness isn't at the finish line. It's in the rhythm of mindful living, when you pause to breathe deeply, to listen to yourself, to feel the sunlight on your skin, or hear a loved one's laughter. That's when you're truly alive, not just existing. After years of working with hundreds of adults, I've learned this. The happiest people aren't the ones who have the most. They're the ones who appreciate the most. So today, no matter how busy life gets, slow down a little. Look around. Be thankful that you're still here, still capable of changing, still able to love. Because sometimes, peace doesn't need to be found. It just needs to be noticed when you finally stop running.